Vincent was the perfect child every parent dreams of. He was obedient, had excellent grades, and always came first in everything. He never got into trouble, and teachers even used him as a good example to encourage other troubled students, like Richie, to behave. Richie, however, didn't like Vincent and hated when compared to him. He thought Vincent acted fake and was just pretending. Vincent wasn't always this well behaved. He used to be very stubborn and caused a lot of trouble when he was younger. He had an older brother, Frank, who passed away when they were younger. Frank was the perfect and well-behaved kid, while Vincent was the troublemaker. One day after school, Vincent and Frank waited at the gate for their dad to pick them up. Frank was absorbed in his book, while Vincent was bursting with energy, eager to play. To get Frank to play with him, Vincent snatched the book Frank was reading and took off running. Frank chased after him, and Vincent kept running. Vincent darted into the street without looking. Frank's heart raced as he sprinted to grab his brother off the street. Just then, a speeding car came charging at Vincent. Frank quickly got close to Vincent and pushed him off the road. Unfortunately, Frank got hit by the car instead. Vincent frantically shook unconscious Frank, trying to wake him, but he remained unresponsive. Just then, their confused dad arrived, followed by an ambulance and police. The driver was arrested, and Frank was rushed to the hospital. Vincent felt overwhelming guilt, thinking that if he had stayed put, Frank wouldn't have been hit. Although Frank initially recovered, he unfortunately passed away days later due to internal injuries. Their parents were heartbroken, and Vincent continued to blame himself. Despite their efforts to appear strong for Vincent's sake, he could see through them. Vincent still blamed himself for what happened to his brother, even though his parents didn't blame him and kept telling him it wasn't his fault. Vincent decided to stop being a troublemaker and become the perfect child for his parents, just like Frank was. Vincent threw himself into his studies, determined to fulfill Frank's dream of becoming a surgeon. He spent every moment studying, participating in extracurricular activities for extra credits to boost his GPA. During graduation, Richie was the happiest because he wouldn't be compared to him anymore. Vincent got accepted into a prestigious university, making his parents really proud. They couldn't stop bragging about their son's achievement to their friends. Richie also got accepted into the same university, but the two never crossed paths. One night, Richie was at an illegal underground boxing match when a DJ was introduced to perform during the match breaks. Richie was surprised to see that the DJ was Vincent. He was wondering what Vincent, who never neared anything that smelled like trouble and wasn't interested in anything that wasn't school-related, would be doing at a place like this and also being a DJ. Richie thought he might be seeing things, and it could be someone who looked like Vincent. After the performance, Richie moved closer and confirmed it was really Vincent. He called out Vincent's name as he approached. Vincent turned and recognized Richie instantly. "You're Vincent, right?" Richie asked. Vincent replied no and quickly walked away. Richie was certain it was Vincent. He wouldn't forget the face of the person he was constantly compared to in high school. The next day, Richie spotted Vincent beside a car on school campus. He approached him saying, "I knew you were the DJ from last night. Why were you acting like a wanted criminal?" Vincent replied, looking around nervously, "I don't know what you're talking about." Just then, Vincent's parents emerged from the car, and Vincent silently gestured for Richie to leave. But Richie instead introduced himself to Vincent's parents. Richie looked like the bad influence friend every parent of a perfect kid wouldn't want around their child. Vincent's parents asked Richie, "Are you Vincent's friend?" Vincent swiftly interjected, "No," but Richie countered, "Yes, we were classmates in high school." Vincent added, "We weren't close." His parents ignored him, smiling at Richie and asking him to take care of their son. Vincent tried telling them Richie wasn't his friend, but they weren't even listening and kept talking to Richie. After Vincent's parents drove away, Vincent tried to leave, but Richie blocked his path. "What do you want?" Vincent asked, slightly annoyed. Richie replied, "I won't let you go until you admit you're the DJ I saw last night." Vincent shrugged. "What's that going to do for you?" Richie replied, "I just want to know." Vincent sighed. "Okay, fine. It was me. Are you happy now?" Richie nodded. and Vincent pushed past him and walked away. For days, Richie and Vincent didn't cross paths at school, their different schedules and departments keeping them apart. Richie attended another illegal underground boxing match, and again Vincent came to DJ. Richie spotted police officers closing in and without much thought, rushed to the stage, pulling Vincent to hide. Vincent was initially confused and annoyed, but soon realized what was happening as the police raided the place, arresting several people. After the police left, Vincent emerged from their hiding spot, followed by Richie. Vincent thought about how he would have had to explain to his parents if he had gotten arrested. Richie interrupted his thoughts, asking, "Aren't you going to thank me?" Vincent replied, "Thank you for what?" Richie responded, "For saving you from getting arrested." Vincent claimed, "I didn't need your help. I could have escaped on my own." Richie stared at Vincent, then asked, "Were you always this annoying?" "You were. But now you're even more annoying." Vincent rolled his eyes, checked his watch, and panicked when he saw the time. He quickly left, realizing the hostel gates were about to close. Richie also checked his watch and understood why Vincent had rushed off. However, instead of hurrying, Richie took his time. When he arrived at the hostel, he found Vincent sitting at the locked gates, looking frustrated. Richie wasn't concerned about the locked gates since he had his own apartment near the school, where he usually stayed due to mostly getting locked out of the hostel. He was about to leave, but couldn't ignore Vincent. Richie asked, "Are you planning to sleep out here tonight?" Vincent responded sarcastically, "Do you have a place for me to stay?" Richie replied, "Depends on your attitude." Vincent faked a wide smile and asked again, "Do you have a place for me to stay?" Richie remarked, "That's the fakest smile I've ever seen." Vincent asked frustratedly, "Do you have a place or not?" Richie finally said, "Follow me." Vincent stood up, and Richie led him to his apartment. It was a big place which seemed pretty much like no one lived there. Vincent looked around, remarking, "Are you sure you live here?" Richie didn't respond, flopping onto the couch, which was too small for him. He gestured to the rooms, saying, "Choose any room you like, and sleep there for the night." Vincent asked, "Are you sure? Why are you sleeping on the couch if you have all these rooms?" Richie ignored him, closing his eyes, pretending to sleep. Vincent commented, "At least take a bath before sleeping," as he entered what seemed to be Richie's room. Vincent showered, using Richie's belongings, and changed into his pajamas. As he lay in bed, his stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten dinner. He got up and approached Richie, who appeared to be sleeping on the couch. Vincent kicked the couch, and Richie opened his eyes, asking, "What now?" Vincent requested, "Do you have anything I can eat?" Richie replied, "Check the kitchen," and closed his eyes again. Vincent searched every cabinet and the fridge but found nothing. He returned, kicked the couch again, and said, "I didn't find anything edible." Richie replied, "Then go to sleep." Vincent insisted, "I can't sleep with a hungry stomach." Just then, Richie's stomach growled loudly. He tried to ignore it, but it was so loud that Vincent heard it. Vincent shook his head and went to a nearby convenience store to buy instant cup noodles and some drinks. When Vincent returned, he kicked Richie's couch again, and Richie sat up, asking, "Do you know how much this couch costs?" Vincent replied, "I don't care. Do you want some?" Taking out a cup noodle, Richie nodded, and Vincent tossed it at Richie, saying, "Make it yourself." Vincent headed to the kitchen to boil water, and Richie lazily followed. They prepared their noodles and sat together at the dining table, eating. Mid-meal, Richie stopped, gazing at Vincent. This was the first time he'd shared a meal with someone. He always ate, slept, and lived alone. His parents divorced when he was 11, and both remarried, now with new families. Neither parent wanted him in their new marriages, so they left him in their big house with just nannies, sending weekly allowance and occasional phone calls. The nannies never actually took care of him and just lazied about, pocketing more half of the money that was sent to him by his parents. Richie just practically took care and raised himself. Even before the divorce, Richie's parents never gave him any attention and were almost always out. Richie had always felt lonely and unloved. He never felt the warmth of his parents' hugs. The big house and bed felt lonely, so Richie preferred to sleep on the couch, cuddling himself, finding it less lonely. Vincent caught Richie staring at him and teased, "Are you being charmed by my beauty?" Richie scoffed, hiding a smile, and continued eating. After finishing, Richie returned to his couch, and Vincent went to the room. The next morning, Vincent woke up early for class and dressed in Richie's clothes. He found Richie asleep, took Richie's phone, set a 5-second timer, and cranked up the volume. He then placed the phone right next to Richie's ear. When the alarm blared loudly after 5 seconds, Richie jolted awake, startled. Vincent turned, silently laughing, and Richie asked, frustrated, "Why wake me so early?" Vincent replied, "I thought you had a class." Richie said he didn't, and tried to sleep again. Noticing Vincent's clothes, he asked, "Are those mine?" Vincent replied, "Yeah, I can't wear my clothes from yesterday, so I borrowed yours. I'll wash and return them." Richie stepped closer, grasping the shirt's hem, and asked, "Do you know how long I waited to buy this shirt? I haven't even worn it yet." Vincent rolled his eyes, removed the shirt in front of Richie, and dropped it on his face, saying, "I'll find another one." Richie looked like he would cry, examining the shirt while Vincent searched for a new one. Vincent left, and Richie went back to sleep. For a week, Vincent carried Richie's washed clothes, hoping to run into him and return them. However, their paths never crossed, and Richie was never at home. Vincent didn't know Richie's department, so he just carried the clothes with him all the time. Finally, a week later, Vincent spotted Richie eating alone in a canteen. He approached him, saying, "Are you a ghost? You're so hard to find." Richie stared at Vincent, asking, "Why did you want to find me?" Vincent handed him the bag of clothes, saying, "I wanted to return these." Richie replied, "I don't need them anymore." Vincent teased, "If you don't take them, I'll drop them in 3, 2, 1. Richie caught the bag just before it hit the floor. Vincent smiled annoyingly, waved goodbye, and left. Days passed without Vincent and Richie seeing each other. Vincent still attended his regular nighttime DJ performances, but he never saw Richie. Vincent signed up to a drama club to earn extra credits. There was going to be a stage play, and getting the lead role meant even more extra credits. At the theater, Vincent found Richie among the auditionees. "What are you doing here?" Vincent asked. Richie replied, "Counting stars." Vincent rolled his eyes and asked, "What role are you auditioning for?" Richie shrugged. "I don't know. I don't really care." Vincent pressed, "Then why are you here?" Richie explained, "It was compulsory to join a club, so I chose this one randomly." He then turned the tables. "And you, let me guess, extra credits?" Vincent replied, "Why ask if you already know?" Richie remarked, "Why are you so obsessed with extra credits? Do medical students have this much free time?" Vincent looked surprised. "How did you know I'm a medical student?" Richie replied, "It wasn't hard to guess." Just then, Vincent was called to audition. He gave it his all, determined to land the lead role. Richie, on the other hand, didn't even try and was disqualified. After the auditions, those who didn't make the cut were assigned to the crew, while those who made it landed roles. Vincent secured the male lead role and approached his female counterpart to schedule practice sessions, but she declined, suggesting they practice individually due to her busy schedule. Vincent was disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. Vincent felt awkward rehearsing in his dorm, surrounded by roommates. He wanted to deliver a perfect performance on the day of the stage play, but there was nowhere else to practice. The only place he could think of was Richie's house. He headed there, hoping Richie would be home. He knocked on the door, and luckily Richie answered. Richie looked surprised at seeing Vincent. "Can I use your place?" Vincent asked. "For what?" Richie questioned. "To rehearse my lines," Vincent replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Richie shrugged, "Do whatever you want," and walked over to the dining table, preoccupied with his phone. Vincent came to Richie's apartment every day to rehearse. Richie started getting used to having Vincent around. On the day before the stage play, Vincent asked Richie to help him rehearse, playing the female lead's role. Vincent handed Richie the script, and Richie read the lines of the female lead, while Vincent said his without looking on the script. As they reached the final scene, Richie unexpectedly kissed Vincent on the lips. Vincent froze, and Richie continued to press his lips against Vincent's. When Vincent snapped out of his shock, he gently pushed Richie back and asked, "What was that?" Richie replied, "Following the script?" Vincent countered, "There's no kiss in the script." Richie pointed out the kissing scene in the script, leaving Vincent confused. "Oh, you could have just told me." Richie responded, "Well, now you know. You should thank me for reminding you about the kiss scene." Vincent faked a smile, saying a sarcastic thank you, and Richie replied in the same way, "You're welcome." On the day of the play, Vincent performed flawlessly. When the kissing scene arrived, he felt uncomfortable about kissing his female lead, so he covered her lips with his thumb and kissed his thumb instead. To the audience and others, it looked like they were actually kissing. Richie stood at his post, operating the lights, looking jealous without realizing it. Vincent's parents were also in the crowd, there to watch their son perform. After the play was over, Richie went backstage to help clear up and dismantle the set, while Vincent left with his parents without even glancing in Richie's direction. Richie felt a little disappointed and sad, thinking he was now back to being like strangers with Vincent, now that Vincent didn't need him anymore. For 2 days, Vincent didn't visit Richie's apartment, and Richie found himself in the cafeteria of Vincent's department, hoping to see him at least. He sat there for a while, but no sight of Vincent. Just as Richie was about to leave, Vincent appeared, approaching him with a curious expression. Richie pretended not to notice, and Vincent drew closer, asking, "What are you doing in my department's cafeteria? And why do I always see you alone? Don't you have friends?" Richie quickly retorted, "I do have friends, but it seems you're the one without them. Who would want to be friends with an annoying nerd like you?" Just then, a group of students who appeared to be Vincent's friends approached him, inviting him to join them to eat, but Vincent declined, saying he wanted to sit with Richie instead. Richie went silent and went back to eating his food, which was already finished. He really didn't have any friends and was embarrassed to admit that. Vincent smiled, looking at Richie as he sat. Richie continued, "I thought we were back to being strangers now that you don't need me anymore." Vincent explained, "I was just busy making up for time I wasted rehearsing for the play." Vincent scanned Richie's face, then teasingly added, "Oh, were you sad you wouldn't get to see me anymore?" Richie quickly denied it. "No, I was relieved I wouldn't have to see your face anymore." Vincent nodded, saying, "Then I guess you don't want to be friends with this annoying nerd." Richie replied, "If you insist." Vincent chuckled, wondering aloud, "Why didn't we ever talk in high school?" Richie replied, "You were too busy being a goody two-shoes, avoiding trouble students like me." Vincent fell silent for a moment before changing the subject. "I'll go grab some food before it's all gone. I'll be back." He got up and left. In the following days, Vincent and Richie kept seeing each other often. Vincent frequently visited Richie's apartment to work on school assignments or simply hang out. Richie felt less and less lonely every day with Vincent's company. Vincent even introduced Richie to his friends, and they all became his friends too. Richie accompanied Vincent to his DJ gigs and didn't bother to rush back to the dorm because he would just spend the night at Richie's. Vincent never understood and always kept asking why Richie always slept in the couch when he had extra rooms, but Richie never answered to his questions. One day, Vincent borrowed Richie's laptop for schoolwork and stumbled upon his academic records. He was shocked to see Richie's struggling GPA. Vincent asked Richie, "How did you manage to get into this school? Are you sure you want to graduate?" Richie shrugged, "It doesn't matter if I don't graduate. No one will even attend my graduation anyway." Vincent encouraged him, "Are you graduating for someone else or yourself? If you need someone to be your source of motivation, then use me. Graduate for me?" Richie asked, "Where do I even start from?" Vincent replied, "I can help you. We are not offering the same course, but I can help you study. You have to study to retake all your failed classes." Richie sank to the floor, looking like he would cry. Vincent helped Richie study, and after every exam, Vincent was there, waiting for Richie. After his last exam, Richie hugged Vincent when he came out to find him waiting. No one had ever waited for him before. He was always the one waiting. He couldn't control tears that came running down his cheek. Vincent was confused as to why Richie was crying, but just hugged him back without asking any questions. After Richie pulled from the hug, Vincent helped him wipe his tears with his finger, chuckling, then said in a low tone, "I didn't know you were such a baby. Are you crying because the exam didn't go well?" Richie shook his head, and Vincent asked, "Then why?" Richie replied, "I just felt like crying." Vincent sighed while smiling lightly, and took Richie's hand, leading him somewhere. Richie asked where they were going, and Vincent replied, "To celebrate." Richie said, "The results aren't even in yet." Vincent replied, "I trust you'll pass very well." Richie didn't know what to expect, but he wasn't expecting Vincent to take him to a market. "What are we doing in a market?" Richie asked, and Vincent replied that he was going to buy groceries to cook for him. "Is that the celebration?" Richie asked, and Vincent nodded his head. Vincent made Richie wait for him at a stop after they walked around for a while, and he noticed how tired Richie looked. At Richie's house, Vincent made Richie sit while he cooked. Richie just watched Vincent cook a variety of dishes and present them on the dining table. Richie had never seen so many dishes cooked at home on a dining table. It was always takeouts or just a stir-fry dish. He stopped himself from having another crying session when Vincent asked if he wanted anything else added. Vincent decorated the table, trying to make it look like a fancy dinner. They both ate, with Vincent continually filling Richie's plate. Richie realized he was slowly falling in love with Vincent. His stomach fluttered every time Vincent drew too close or made any physical contact with him. Even Vincent's voice sent his heart fluttering. He was okay with his love just being one-sided, as he knew Vincent probably only saw him as a friend. He was okay as long as Vincent was still in his life. One day, as Richie bent to pick up something that fell to the floor, Vincent noticed tattoos on his back. Surprised, Vincent asked, "I never knew you had tattoos. How long have you had them?" Richie replied, "Since I was 15. Vincent exclaimed, 15. "Do they have any meaning behind them?" Richie forced a smile saying, "No, I just randomly got them in hopes of getting into trouble and getting my parents to care about me about something, but it was useless." Vincent stared at Richie, concerned. Richie continued, "Do you still want to know why I always prefer sleeping on the couch?" Vincent replied, "If you're okay telling me." Richie shared everything about his parents and his lonely childhood, and how sleeping on the couch made him feel less alone because it was a tight space. He felt jealous when he saw his parents looking happy with their new kids and showing them love they never showed him. He shared how he tried to gain their attention in every way, even getting into their dream school for their kids, but they never cared or showed up for anything concerning him. After Richie finished speaking, he tried to hide his tears behind a weak smile. The moment Vincent pulled him into a gentle hug, the tears began streaming down his face. That night, Vincent stayed over. He walked over to Richie on the couch, pulled him up, and asked him to sleep in the bedroom with him. Richie hadn't slept on an actual bed in years and had forgotten the feeling of it. He felt a sense of comfort with Vincent and agreed. As they lay in bed, Vincent opened his arms, inviting Richie to hug him. Richie scooted over, embracing Vincent and burying his face in his chest. Vincent wrapped his arms around Richie, stroking his hair. Richie slept more soundly than he had in years. Vincent and Richie ate together every day. They had lunch with Vincent's friends, who were now Richie's friends too. At night, Vincent came over to eat dinner and sleep with Richie. Richie eagerly waited for Vincent to show up every night. One day, Vincent suggested decorating Richie's house to make it more lively. Before, Richie didn't see any need for that, but now the idea of decorating his house with Vincent sounded exciting. They both went to a mall to get things to decorate the house. The trip to the mall seemed like a date. Vincent held Richie's hand the entire time without realizing it, and Richie was just enjoying the moment, his face red the entire time. Richie left the decision of choosing what to buy for the apartment to Vincent and just watched him struggle with choosing between two things he liked, smiling. In between shopping, they stopped to get some ice cream. As they were licking their ice creams, Vincent wiped a smudge from the corner of Richie's lips. This made Richie's stomach fill up with butterflies, and he forgot how to breathe. Vincent noticed Richie eyeing his ice cream and asked, "Do you want mine?" Richie shyly nodded, and Vincent handed his ice cream over. Vincent had barely taken a lick, but Richie had almost finished his own. Richie jokingly asked Vincent if he wanted his, not expecting Vincent to say yes, but Vincent did, and Richie handed it over, surprised. They returned home after getting all they needed, and Vincent started helping Richie decorate his apartment. While clearing things that weren't really needed, Vincent noticed a box. He opened it and saw some journals and other stuff, probably from Richie's childhood. Vincent respected Richie's privacy, so he didn't open any of the journals. He also saw a tattoo gun. Surprised, he took it to show Richie. "Are you a tattoo artist?" he asked. Richie replied, "Not really. I got that during my phase of wanting to become one. It didn't really last." Vincent then asked suddenly, "Should we get matching tattoos?" Richie was taken aback and replied, "Huh." Vincent continued, "It doesn't have to be anything big, just a tiny one. I've always wanted to get tattoos, but I don't want to do anything that might disappoint my parents." Richie asked, "Are you planning on using that?" pointing to the tattoo gun Vincent was holding. Vincent replied, "Can't we?" And Richie replied, "No, it's really old, and we don't even have any ink." Vincent replied, "We can buy new ones," and Richie continued, "Or we can just go to a tattoo parlor." Vincent asked, "Can we go tomorrow?" And Richie nodded. The next day, a weekend, they went to the tattoo parlor, both unsure of what design they wanted. Vincent casually decided for them to get a tiny heart. Vincent went first and got his tattoo below his abdomen, so it wouldn't be visible to anyone. After it was done, he impulsively added Richie's initial in the middle. Richie was surprised, but Vincent was just excited, getting his first tattoo. Richie also got the same tattoo as Vincent, also getting Vincent's initial in it. On their way home, Vincent kept scratching the area of the tattoo as it was itching, and Richie kept trying to stop him. Vincent intertwined his fingers with Richie's, keeping his other hand in his pocket to resist the urge to scratch. When they got home, Vincent asked Richie to check if his tattoo was okay from too much scratching, since he couldn't check himself because it was below his abdomen and he couldn't really see it properly. Richie swallowed hard as Vincent slightly lowered his pants and he bent to check. As Richie stood up, his face met Vincent's, their lips almost touching. He pressed his lips as he leaned in to kiss. Vincent leaned in too, his eyes fixed on Richie's lips. When Richie noticed, he slowly pulled back and Vincent chased his lips, their faces still inches apart. "What are you doing?" Richie asked in a low voice, his voice barely audible. Vincent's response was barely audible too, "I don't know." The two paused for a moment, before their lips finally met in a soft kiss. Vincent's hand cradled Richie's cheek, his fingers tangling in his hair, while Richie's hands found their way to Vincent's chest, one grasping the hem of his shirt. The kiss deepened as their mouths moved in sync. Richie couldn't believe Vincent was kissing him, as his heart raced in excitement. He didn't want the moment to end. The soft sounds of their kiss filled his ears. After a while, they broke apart, their eyelids heavy. The room fell silent, each waiting for the other to speak. Vincent finally broke the silence, asking, "Are you hungry?" Richie responded, "Huh? Ugh, yes." Vincent then said, "I'll prepare something quick," before heading to the kitchen. Later at night, as they prepared for bed, Richie lay stiffly, wondering if they would cuddle like usual. Vincent teased, "Why are you laying there like a corpse?" and pulled Richie into his arms, wrapping his arms around him. As Vincent whispered good night, Richie remained silent, his face flushing bright red. Vincent lifted Richie's face, their eyes meeting, and repeated, "Good night." Richie just nodded, and Vincent smiled slyly before snuggling in close. In the following days, Vincent and Richie's relationship remained the same. No awkward tension from Vincent, and Richie tried to not be awkward. As the semester drew to a close, Vincent had to focus more on his studies, leaving him with less free time. However, he still made time at least eat one meal during the day with Richie and sleep beside him until he fell asleep, before getting up to continue studying. This continued until Vincent collapsed during a lab session and was rushed to the school clinic. His parents, frantic with worry, arrived at the clinic and were relieved to find Vincent okay. The doctors said his collapse was due to prolonged stress of the body and brain, which made the brain shut down. They advised him to rest and reduce his mental and physical exertion. Richie, having heard about Vincent's collapse from his friends, rushed to the clinic. Vincent's parents asked him if his course was too stressful and whether it was truly what he wanted to pursue. Vincent remained silent for a while before giving a single nod. His mother's eyes welled up with tears as she said, "We know you're still blaming yourself for what happened to your brother, and you're doing all this just for him. But we just want you to be you, do what you love and be happy." They told him that his late brother would want him to move on and live for himself. Vincent found himself also crying as he tried wiping his mom's tears. He realized that his self-blame had also hurt his parents. His mom hugged him, "Promise us from now on you won't blame yourself and you'll let go of the guilt and live for yourself." His father joined the hug, tears streaming down their faces. Vincent asked hesitantly, "Is it okay if I want to be a DJ?" His parents replied, "Of course." He continued, "And what if I get a tattoo?" They smiled. "Why not?" Vincent asked, "What if I like a boy? Will you be okay with me dating a boy?" Parents reassured him, "We'll support you in everything, as long as it's what you love, and it's not illegal." They all laughed, and Vincent's mom asked, "Is there a boy you like?" Vincent nodded, a smile forming on his face. All these while, Richie was at the door. He didn't enter because he didn't want to interrupt and had heard and seen everything through the glass panel. This was his first time seeing Vincent cry and look vulnerable. Vincent and his parents noticed a head peeking through the door's transparent panel. Vincent recognized it was Richie and said out loud, "You can come in." Richie realized he had been seen and awkwardly entered. Vincent's mom looked at him as if asking if Richie was the boy he liked. His parents announced they were leaving, saying they'd make him soup at home, and left Vincent and Richie alone in the room. Before leaving, they asked Richie to keep an eye on Vincent and not allow him do anything that will stress the body and brain. As they left, Richie sat on the bed, asking Vincent if he was okay. Vincent replied he was. Richie just stared softly at Vincent, stroking his hair, saying, "You know, you can tell me anything. You don't always have to keep things to yourself." Vincent smiled as he took Richie's hand, pulling him into a gentle hug. Richie asked Vincent to live with him even though they practically live together now, so he can keep an eye on him just like Vincent's parents asked. It was his turn to be there for Vincent, just as Vincent had always been there for him. Richie helped Vincent pack a few belongings from his dorm to his apartment. As they got to Richie's apartment and were sitting just relaxing, Richie asked, "So, who's this boy that you like?" Vincent acted confused. "What boy?" Richie continued, "I heard you tell your parents there is a boy that you like." Vincent replied, "I did," trying to hold in a giggle. Richie nodded. Vincent then said, "Come closer, and I'll tell you." Richie moved his ear close to Vincent's mouth and Vincent kissed his cheek. Richie was surprised, turning to look at Vincent, and their faces met. Vincent pecked Richie's lips. "He's right here in front of me." Richie's eyes sparkled. "Really?" Vincent nodded, kissing him again. "Do you have someone that you like?" Richie nodded shyly. "I like you." Vincent stared at Richie's face, which had now turned red, then said, "You look like a tomato." Richie touched his face and wanted to get up to check his face in a mirror, but Vincent pulled him back and kissed him. Vincent slowly sunk in the couch with Richie on top of him as they kissed. Vincent completed his medical studies and after graduating, visited his brother's grave, placing his certificate beside the photo. He decided to fully pursue what he loved, which was being a DJ. Meanwhile, Richie was uncertain about what he wanted to do after graduating. His mother, living abroad, invited him to work at her husband's company, but Richie declined the offer. He didn't know why she suddenly wanted him in her life, but he no longer needed any of his parents' attention or anything from them. He and Vincent lived together after they graduated, their love for each other growing stronger each passing day. Vincent was all that Richie needed in his life. They became each other's safe space.